Alright, so we are going to go ahead and go over the review sheet for your 3A test. In number 1, we are literally just simplifying each of these expressions into a more simple form. So for this, you're going to want to use your identities. The first identity for number 1 is you're going to want to rewrite these. Cosecant you can rewrite as 1 over sine of theta. Cosine you're going to want to rewrite, or you can just actually keep that as cosine for now. Tangent you're going to want to rewrite as sine over cosine. And then secant you're going to want to rewrite as 1 over cosine. So now, you're going to go through and you're going to simplify and cross out things that are the same on the top and bottom. So notice that I have a cosine here. This is really cosine over 1. So cosine's on the top and bottom, I can cross it out. Sine is on the bottom and top, I can cross that out. So really all I'm left with is 1 over cosine. And 1 over cosine is the same thing as secant. So my answer for this one is just secant theta. If you left it like this, it's really not proper form because you don't want to have fractions when you simplify. You want to try to just give it as a single function or combination of functions. For letter B, you can rewrite the top cosecant as 1 over sine. You can rewrite tangent as cosine over sine. And then you're going to keep this as cosine of x. Okay? Now, if you simplify the top here, you're going to be left with cosine over sine squared. So cosine x over sine squared. And then when you divide by cosine, dividing by cosine is the same as multiplying by 1 over cosine. So notice when you multiply by 1 over cosine, you have a cosine on the top and bottom that cross out. You're left with 1 over sine squared, and 1 over sine squared is cosecant squared. So cosecant squared x is your answer. For the last one, for letter C, for this one you're going to want to rewrite cosecant squared first. So you're going to have cosine squared a. Cosecant you're going to write as 1 over sine squared a. And then tangent times cotangent is just 1, because tangent you can write as sine over cosine. And cotan you can write as cosine over sine. So really, the sines cross out on the top and bottom, the cosines cross out on the top and bottom. So I'm just left with 1. So I'm left with now cosine squared over sine squared. And cosine squared over sine squared is cotangent squared a plus 1. Now you should also recognize this as one of your Pythagorean identities. So cotangent squared a plus 1 is equal to cosecant squared a. Okay, so that is the process of simplifying. Again, here it says simplify each expression. Okay? In number 2, notice you see the word verify. And the word verify is basically another word for prove. So whenever you see prove or verify, you're going to want to work on one side of the equation to show that it's equal to the other side. So looking at letter A, if I like to draw a line where my equal sign is, and I like to stay on one side of this line, because I know if I stay on one side of this line and work down, then I have completed a correct proof. So let's work on the left side to get it to look like sine squared of b. So first, if you notice, in both of these terms I have tan squared. So I can factor out a tan squared b. I'm left with 1 minus sine squared b. 1 minus sine squared b is actually cosine, and I can rewrite tangent as sine squared b over cosine squared b. And then 1 minus sine squared is cosine squared b. Now if you notice, this is really cosine squared b over 1, so cosine squared is on the top and bottom, and I'm left with sine squared b. You need to show all of this work in order to receive full credit for proving something. Alright, let's move on to letter B. Letter B, sine squared x times 1 plus tan squared x equals tan squared. So for this one, the first thing that you're going to want to do is notice that 1 plus tan squared is the same thing as secant squared. So sine squared x times secant squared x. And again, you want to draw your line and just work on one side of that line. So secant squared is the same as cosine, so sine squared x times 1 over cosine squared x. And when I simplify that, I'm left with sine squared x over cosine squared x. And sine squared x over cosine squared x is tan squared x. So now I'm left with tan squared x is equal to tan squared x. And you know you've completed your proof. Letter C perhaps involves a little bit more work, but it is possible to simplify very easily. Now remember, there's a lot of great ways to get from one to the other, and you can work with either side that you want to work with. I'm going to choose to work with a cotangent squared x side, and I'm going to choose to leave them in my reciprocal identities, or my reciprocal functions. So I'm going to rewrite cotangent squared as cosecant squared x minus 1. Now when I do that, you should notice that this is a difference of squares, which means that I get cosecant x plus 1 on top and cosecant x minus 1. And if you notice, that's the same as my bottom, cosecant x minus 1. So since I have cosecant x minus 1 on the top and bottom, I can cross those out. Now I'm just left with cosecant x plus 1. Now cosecant I can rewrite as 1 over sine x. So I'm going to rewrite this as 1 over sine of x plus 1. Now I need a common denominator here, so I'm going to continue my work over here. Okay, I'm going to pick up over here. Let me just recopy that step. So 1 sine x plus 1. Alright, common denominator is sine, so I'm going to write this as 1 over sine of x plus sine x over sine x. Because remember, sine x over sine x is the same thing as 1, so I'm just rewriting it so I have a common denominator, which means I'm left with 1 plus sine x over sine of x, which if you notice, that's originally what I'm trying to get for my identity, so 1 plus sine x over x, sine of x. Now, if you've wanted to, you could have changed this cotangent into cosine over sine and changed the cosecant to 1 over sine and then done your reciprocals that way. You would have ended up with the same thing. It might have taken you a little longer to get there, but again, you would have wound up with the same thing. Okay, so that is page 2. Please see my next video I'm sorry, that was page 1. Please see my next video for page 2.